Door 5. So, yeah, we have almost finished this franchise. We have a couple of movies. We have 3 more movies to go. We have Saw 6 and then Saw 7, the final chapter. And then we ended off with Jigsaw because I've already done a review on Spiral. But like, I'll still rewatch Spiral just in case maybe my opinion on that movie has changed. But that movie is still very recent in my memory, so I don't think so. But yeah, I'll watch it anyways since I am watching and reviewing all of these movies. It would be a shame. It would be a shame to leave one out. So yeah, and especially now looking at it from the perspective of I know who the killer is now. So hopefully going in and looking at it from that perspective, hopefully there might be certain clues in that movie that that might make that movie better. Or 5. This is the one that I have seen the least out of the entire franchise. Because I don't remember much about this movie, and what I do remember about it though is it wasn't as good as the first 4 movies, and it wasn't as good as the one that comes after this. And with this viewing, I wanted to give it a fair chance, as I do with every movie. I wanted to give it a fair chance. Like, it didn't win me over the first time, but a second viewing or a third viewing, it might win me over. Who knows? So yeah, I went into this movie wanting to like it because I love this franchise and I love the first 4 movies, and yeah, and so I went in giving it a pretty fair shot as a Saw movie, and I was looking for reasons to like this movie. And after watching this viewing, there is certainly a lot of good in the movie. It's just this one. It's still the most disappointing out of this entire franchise, which that pains me to say because I really wanted to like this one. And so yeah, this is the first movie in the franchise where Daniel Bozeman he stepped down. He stepped down from the director role, and we have a first-time director taking over the directing position, and that is David Hackey. Which yeah, he's a first-time director in this franchise, but he was a production designer on Saw 2, Saw 3, and Saw 4, and now he's in the directing seat, actually making a Saw movie of his own. Which, when you watch this movie, it definitely does feel like a first-time director. This one feels different from what the first 4 movies set up, and the style of the first 4 movies, and the tone and the direction and the writing in those movies. This one feels very different because the timeline here, this movie does throw quite a few questions at you with some of its reveals, which I will get into when I get into them, because I did take a lot of dot points down, as I do with every movie in this franchise. And I don't want to come across as a person who's against a new person coming in to take over a franchise. I welcome a new director to come in and do his own spin and take on this franchise. Let's get into the movie. So the opening trap is the pendulum trap, which this is a pretty cool looking trap as far as design wise. I really like the way this trap looks. But the payoff to this trap I don't like. Because the way Seth was supposed to get out of this trap is if he was to crush his hands, which he does do that. So that means the pendulum, the thing above him should have stopped and he should have walked free because he played by the rules of the game. But then on the other hand, the game we're seeing, this is not Jigsaw's game anymore. This is Hoffman's game. I like this opening trap is because it goes against everything about Jigsaw's morals and why he started this game in the first place. He started it to teach people a lesson about life and to teach them right from wrong, because putting them in jail wasn't enough. But then putting them in this game to fight for their survival and learn a lesson while doing so, that was the lesson he wanted to teach these people. And so this opening trap, Seth, he played by the rules. He did what the tape said. He should have walked free out of that trap. because his hands were the main weapon for his crimes in the past, and so that's the thing that's why he's crushing them, is because that's a part of the lesson being taught in his game. But then, since this is Hoffman's game and Seth killed Hoffman's sister, like there is no chance. There is no chance in this game. Like, he was going to die. I don't like how Hoffman has put his own spin and his own rules on Jigsaw's games now, because that was the thing I really liked about the past 4 movies. Is the victims is they were there for a reason, and if they survive the trap, like, they would walk out there as a new person. They would walk out reborn, like living a new life, if you want to put it that way. And in Saw 5, like, Hoffman, like, everyone who was in the traps, like, was supposed to die. So after Strom shoots Jeff at the end of Saw 4 and we see the door close, Hoffman, where you find out that Hoffman was the one to lock Strom in that room. And now this is where one of my biggest issues with this movie comes into play. So Strom, he finds this secret passageway, and he finds a tape that was made for him, like it was recorded for Detective Strom. And so how did Hoffman know Strom would be the one to survive? Because Jeff, like, it was a 50-50 chance here. Like, Jeff could have won just as much as Strom. Like, they both had a pretty good chance here. So if Jeff won, that means he would be picking up the tape that was made for Strom. So this game was never created for Jeff. So Jeff was always going to die. But if Jeff did win, that means he would be finding, if he found the tape that was created for Strom, that means Jeff would be playing Strom's game, like the one that we're seeing in this movie, that we would be seeing. So Jeff would be playing, like, the wrong game. And, like, it's just like, it makes no sense to me how Hoffman, how he can easily predict who's going to win. And he's actually right when it's a 50-50 chance on either side. So Strom got captured, and then we see his trap, which is the water box trap. Strom's head is trapped in this square box that is filling with water by the second. And the way Strom gets out of this trap, like, I think is genius. It happens after that. Jill receives a box from her husband, John Kramer, which we don't see what's inside this box. I'm guessing they're saving the answer to that till next movie. But Jill's reaction and facial expression, like, told us that it's something, it's whatever it is, whatever it's inside this chest, it's not good. And Jill, she had the key to this chest over her neck the entire time, so I don't know what's in the box, but then Jill takes it away. So I guess we'll find out what's inside the box and what it's used for in the next movie. So I am curious about that. And then we find out Strom actually survived his trap, and Detective Hoffman's face when he realizes Hoffman is alive is like, that is a great facial expression. Like, he's just like, oh shit, because Strom, he was never supposed to survive that trap. Like, he was always going to die. So when Hoffman finds out he's still alive and that there is one survivor, he's like, oh shit, I have to do something about this. And then a few minutes later, Strom wakes up in the hospital, and his voice is all raspy, which, like, I love that sense of detail to his performance and the realism on it. It's just like, I love the detail, like, of what he gives to his performance, and he keeps that voice all throughout this movie, and it's just like I don't know, like, the detail, the sense of detail in these movies, I absolutely love. So Hoffman receives a letter on his desk, which reads, "I know who you are." So somebody knows Hoffman is working with Jigsaw, and he's the one and he's the one who has killed all these people, and he's the one who is running the game in this movie. So yeah, that's another question that will be answered in 6, hopefully. Like, I don't know who it would be. I'm trying to think who knows Hoffman is Jigsaw's apprentice in this movie, because we only found out at the end of Saw 4 that he's Jigsaw's apprentice, and the only one that knows he's alive is Detective Riggs. But then he died. He died due to the gun wound, and he died in that room. So he's out of the picture. I was watching this movie. I was looking at who has Hoffman encountered in Saw 5, but then on the other hand, Hoffman has worked with Jigsaw long before the events of the first movie. Like, his first encounter with Jigsaw goes back way before the events of the first movie were ever helmed, and he helped set up the game in the second movie, and he helped set up the razor wire trap in the first movie with capturing him, which is a great flashback later on in this movie, which is fantastic and probably my favorite flashback in this movie. Hoffman's game begins, and we're introduced to our new characters who are in this game, which this is where this movie lacks. Is the game. Like, the game in this movie, it felt like an afterthought. It felt like the detective story between Strom and Hoffman. It seems like that's where the strong points of this movie is. I mean, this one doesn't feel as strong as the games that were played in Saw 4, Saw 3, Saw 2, and Saw 1. And instead, the game that's in Saw 5, it feels very disconnected, and it feels like an afterthought to the overall story of this movie, because front and center of this movie, this is a movie about Strom finding out who Hoffman is, and Hoffman blaming Strom for the Jigsaw murders. Like, that's what this story is, and it seems like that's where a lot of the strong parts of this movie, and that's where the movie really hits, is the detective elements. And while the game, there is a connection between all of these characters that are involved in the game, because they were all involved in this fire that happened. But then that doesn't really have any connection to the story outside of the game. What's being told inside the game is a story on its own. It's a story between this group of characters, and then outside of that, when we're focusing on the detective stuff, it seems like that is where the story, that's where like Saw 5, I think really shines there, because that ties well into Saw 3 and Saw 4. I'll talk more about that as I go on with this review. And as far as our new characters in this game that we are following, I didn't like any of them. I found their personalities very annoying, and as soon as you're introduced to them, they come off as whiny assholes, and there's very little investment I had towards these characters. Like, I was more interested in the whole Detective Strom and Detective Hoffman story that was going on. And it's so obvious in this movie, it's so obvious in this game that they have to work together. And that turns out to be the twist of Saw 5, and what a weak twist in this movie. Like, I have liked all of the twists up until Saw 5. Like, it's so obvious from the first trap that they are in together that they have to work as a team in order to get out. And like, none of these characters were ever supposed to die. They were all supposed to live. Which, yeah, it's such a weak twist, because like it's all in plain view. Like, it's not shocking when it's basically being presented to you in the very first trap. So, anyways, I'll talk more about the twist when I get to that. Strom investigates Seth's trap because Strom has a feeling Hoffman has something to do with the Jigsaw murders. And then there's a flashback. There's a flashback of Hoffman cutting a piece out of Seth's body in the shape of a jigsaw piece. I really like that because, as I said in my Saw 2 review, it's like it embraces the Jigsaw name that John Kramer was given. So I like that. The transitions in this one, while they are the most weakest out of the franchise, there are one or two that I can take out of this movie as being cool. So yeah, take that as you will. And then there's a flashback where Hoffman meets John Kramer for the first time in an elevator, where John Kramer captures Hoffman, and then we find out Seth killed Hoffman's sister. Um, which that's the reason why Seth did not survive the opening trap, the pendulum kill at the beginning of this movie, is because Hoffman designed that trap to kill him. There was no way of him getting out of it because Hoffman hates Seth for killing his sister and he's getting revenge on him for that. So yeah. And then there's a flashback to Saw 1 where Paul is drinking his pain and faults away, and he breaks a glass bottle and he's about to slash his wrist when someone blows his tire, and so he goes out to investigate it, and then Jigsaw and Hoffman are the two behind the pig mask. This is where we find out Hoffman was working with Jigsaw way before the events of the first movie even happened. But then that also brings up another question. Who was Jigsaw's first apprentice? Because Amanda was working with Jigsaw prior to the events of the first movie, because we see her dragging in Adam's body and chain him up to the bathroom. And so, and Hoffman, we see him working with Jigsaw to capture Paul and put him in his trap, which is the razor wire trap in the first movie. And then we also see Hoffman work on the game in Saw 2, and so I think Hoffman was Jigsaw's first apprentice. I'm only guessing there, but from the information I can gather, Hoffman was Jigsaw's first apprentice, followed by Amanda, and then last would be Dr. Gordon. The only way it makes sense to me, because Amanda's trap would have taken place before the events of the first movie, because she's helping out John Kramer chain up Adams and Dr. Gordon's body. So that would have meant that Amanda also would have helped with capturing them too. But then Hoffman, he also would have been involved in that somehow. So, I want to say Hoffman was working with Jigsaw way before Amanda became one of Jigsaw's apprentices, and then after Saw 1 is when Dr. Gordon joined as Jigsaw's main apprentice, as we find out in Saw 7. So, yeah, I'm going to go with that for now. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. Maybe Saw 6 might clear up some of those questions about the timeline, because it makes the most sense to me to have Hoffman being Jigsaw's first apprentice. Because then Amanda was put back in the game in Saw 2. And Hoffman helped set up the game in Saw 2, so that means So that means Hoffman and Amanda. That means they would have worked together in the first movie. Find out that John Kramer was an engineer in his early years, so which that does clear up why he's so good at making like these big elaborate traps. So yeah, that does clear up that answer. In Saw 3, John Kramer told Hoffman to set up a game of his own, which is a group of victims that we see, which is the game that we're seeing play out in Saw 5. Saw 5, this is Hoffman's game. So each of the rooms were created by Hoffman, and because John Kramer gave Hoffman and gave him a folder with the pictures of the victims, he has to capture and put in this game. Please get a track on Strom's phone, which is in Jigsaw's warehouse, and that was all part of Hoffman's plan, was to set up Strom as being the Jigsaw killer, which all throughout this movie he is suspicious when he's like talking to people, when he's holding all of these folders and he's walking around like at night when he's the only one in the office, and so he does act very suspicious. So I can see why a lot of people in this movie would think Strom is the Jigsaw killer. But Hoffman he blamed Strom to be the Jigsaw killer. But then wouldn't that whole storyline be a waste in Saw 6? Because in Saw 6 Strom would already be dead unless Saw 6 takes place in another part of the timeline. Once they find out Strom is dead, there's only very minimal suspects left, because Hoffman's plan here was he was supposed to be like the only one that survived and rescued people from the traps. He was supposed to be the city's hero, and that's why he gets the award at the beginning of the movie. Strom found very early on in this movie that Hoffman was the one pulling all these strings. And so why didn't he go to the head of the police and tell them that Hoffman is a Jigsaw killer? He's the one who's responsible for Seth's death and many other deaths in this franchise, because Strom, he has evidence, he just doesn't have enough evidence. So Strom's whole storyline here is he's going on this big investigation on trying to prove on why Hoffman is the killer, and he's trying to back up with as much evidence as possible. The ending of this movie is Strom following Hoffman into his house, and he finds this board in the floor, which leads to Strom's fate, because he thinks Hoffman went down there, and so yeah, he follows it down there, and now this is where his fate lies. And so Hoffman, he predicted that Strom would try and push him into this glass box. Is why Hoffman fights back at Strom, is to make Strom think this is where you will die. This is like the death trap of the ending. And so yeah, everything went to plan for Hoffman. He planned that Strom would push him into the glass box, which he did. The wolves start closing in on Strom, Strom is the only one that knows who Hoffman really is, which he clarifies that. But then after Strom dies, Hoffman, he's still clear. like nobody can tell that Hoffman is the Jigsaw killer when Strom is the only one that has investigated his case in depth and knows who he really is. Nobody else knows. And so yeah, when Strom dies, which that they are some fantastic practical effects. Like when the walls start closing in on him, and you see his bones pop out, like fucking amazing practical gore there. Like that is amazing. And that is another positive I can give to this movie. While this movie isn't the most glorious entry in the franchise, there is some great practical gore on display, like the second final trap of this movie, when the guy has put his hand in the razor blade, like that. There is some great practical gore and makeup there. Like I love that. Death's Death had some great practical gore. But this movie, it doesn't, like, there are a few scenes that did take me out of the scene, like the second trap in this movie where the girl's head gets cut off from the blade, and it looked like a special effect. Like during the aftermath of her kill, when you see her body just laying on the ground and there's blood everywhere, like that was cool. Like there was some good practical stuff there. But yeah, this movie, okay, where this movie lacks the most is in the game. Like the game, it does not feel earned in this movie, and which that's a shame to say, because like during a Saw movie, you want the game and you want the kills to be like really cool. And this movie, I think has some of my least favorite traps in the entire franchise. I mean, sure, the opening trap is cool, and the second final trap in the movie is cool, but then just the other trap, it's so bogged down, this movie, and it's so dull. I wanted this movie to be good, but this is everything I remember this movie being. And it's not terrible. There are a lot of stuff to enjoy in this movie. Like as I've said in this review, like the Strom and Hoffman storyline in this movie. Like I love that. I thought that was the best part. That was the best part about this movie. It hates me to say Saw 5 wasn't good, because I went into this movie pretty open-minded and wanting to like it, and it just it didn't really do anything for me, this viewing. I am looking forward to moving on to Saw 6, though, since that's one I haven't seen in quite a few years, and I remember very little about it, so I am looking forward to watching that either tonight or tomorrow night. So anyways, guys, that is my review for Saw 5. If you have seen Saw 5, let me know down in the comments, what did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you think it was mad? Or did you really not like it? Let me know all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. So anyways, guys, I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening or night, or wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, bye.